Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can all hear me. Thanks for joining today's webinar series. Just an update on today's session. This is the second part of the Bimstore webinar series, and we're going to concentrate on system families, a bit more specifically piping systems. I've created a few slides on this presentation, and I'll be dropping in and out, completing live demos within the Autodesk Revit platform. At the end of the webinar, we'll supply a bit of contact information, so if you want to get in touch with any questions or queries, you can do. So, a bit about myself. So, I'm Ryan Lashley. I'm a Senior Content Specialist here at Bimstore. I'm an architectural technician. I studied at Northumbria University. That's a bit about me. Bimstore is part of the Space Group umbrella. We work alongside Space Architects, BIM Technologies, and the SAT team. We all work in the same office space, and we all help improve each other's outputs, ensure that we're getting all work to the highest efficiencies. So yeah, that's a bit about me. So the purpose of today's webcast is to give ourselves at Bimstore a bit of an opportunity to use a few of our techniques and processes that we use internally every day, which helps us create work content efficiently, and also to make sure that the output of the content we create is easy to use, but also has as much functionality as possible built in, to ensure that the end user, the specifier of the component, has the best components to hand. As I mentioned before, this session will be based around the Autodesk Revit platform. We are aware that it is not the only BIM platform out there, but Autodesk Revit is definitely one of the most popular. And as well as that, obviously I understand there's going to be a large variation of expertise in this software viewing this webinar. So there will be some that know the ins and outs of the software, but hopefully everyone can take something useful away from this session. So when Bimstore decided that we're going to proceed with the webinar series, we picked three main categories to start with. So as you can see on the screen here, loadable families was actually the first webinar that we had. It was actually presented by my colleague Chris Atkinson, who's the technical director here at Bimstore. So within that webinar, which took place last month, it was a lot about how to incorporate tick boxes, drop downs, a lot of the stuff that we actually use internally day to day. As well as that, you've got all the data which is included within the components as standard to meet Bimstore standards, industry standards, as well as a lot of the data that manufacturers like to include and incorporate into their components. So Chris's webinar is actually now available on the BIM TV section of the Bimstore website, as well as the Bimstore YouTube channel. So you can actually go back and watch that, pick up a few little tricks, if you will, but it is worth the watch. And then we'll move on to today's webinar, which is, as I said, presented by myself, and that's going to be about the pipework, the piping systems, and then we have one on 30th of September, so this time next month roughly, from my colleague Connor, which is going to be again about system families, but more based on walls, floors, and roofs, that kind of thing. So yeah, you have another webinar to look forward to and sign up to if that's something you're interested in. Within Revit, you actually have three Revit family types. So there's system families, loadable families, and adaptive components. Adaptive components are very specialized, very unique, and very complex to use if you haven't used the software before. We don't normally build adaptive components, or we do, but there are few and far between. A lot of the time we're building their system families or loadable families. As I've mentioned, Chris has already done a webinar on the loadable families, and hopefully between mine and Connor's webcast, we're going to cover quite a lot of the system families. So, internally here at Bimstore, we always think that it's highly important to plan out the families you're about to create. So this way you can ensure that everything you're actually creating is going to be built efficiently and is also going to work for the end user. So the first thing really to think about is what you would like the outcome to be. What would you like the functionalities to be? And how simple or complex would you like the component to be itself? What does it actually need to do? You then got to break it down into how many projects it's going to require, how many families you're going to require, that sort of thing. As well as obviously all your features and stuff that you want to include. Then going to break down and work out how you're actually going to create those. As well as that, there's obviously the data side of things. So what data are you going to include? What data sets are you going to use? Simply PDT data? Is there a PDT out there who's not supplied by SIMSI? That kind of thing. What are you actually going to build into your front end? So obviously, more specific to what we're doing today, you're going to want to have all of the plumbing fixtures set up correctly for the system, which we're going to cover in today's webcast, such as the connectors, the categories, that kind of thing. As well as you're going to want to have a data set out so that when you're actually scheduling this pipe system at the end of your live project or during your live project, all the information within that you're going to actually need is actually going to be readily available. So on the back pages of the Bimstore Bible available from our website is actually a content creation checklist, which is actually a handy couple of pages, which will give you sort of a bit more of a structure as well. It'll kind of give you the first few steps on the easiest way on. Well, it's just there to sort of structure your build. They are very useful. We do use them sometimes internally, and they were created by the internal content creation team, so they are actually relevant. So just while we're touching on to the Bimstore Bible, Bimstore's just released the version 15 of the Bimstore Bible. Up until the start of July, we were actually using version 14, but now family naming, that kind of thing, has actually been updated. But within the Bimstore Bible, it'll actually give you a bit more of a rigid breakdown of what the family naming should be, what levels of detail it needs to include, how to set up your materials, that kind of thing. It gives a lot of examples, it gives a lot of support, but as well as that, it actually includes all the features and benefits you can actually get through Bimstore, such as the frog plugin, which is now available, digital DNA, which can be built into your components, that kind of thing. That's all available to read in the Bimstore Bible, which, like I've said, you can download from the Bimstore website under the Resource Center. So, on to system families. So this here is a bit of a breakdown of what we're going to cover today. So, an MEP system, how to set up your pipe fittings correctly so that your connectors are there, your categories there, that kind of thing. And then how to actually create our own pipe system, create our own segments and sizes, adding and removing and prioritizing pipe fittings within a round preference, which again we're going to set up during this webinar. So obviously I've mentioned a lot what is a system family. The difference between a system family and a loadable family is it's kind of a bit self-explanatory. The loadable family actually load in from a family editor, and the system family is actually already based within a project. So you've got your walls, floors, roofs, railings, that kind of thing, balustrades, staircases, but sometimes they are recombinant, as well as obviously your MEP stuff, sorry, so your electrical, your duct systems, your pipe systems, that kind of thing. But such as the example today, even though we are building a pipe system, which is within the system family, we are actually using loadable families as the pipe fittings themselves, which are actually going to be loaded into our system. So they can actually be collaborated. So on to our session today. So we're actually going to use one of our manufacturer-specific components from the Bimstore website, more specifically the Polypipe Polyfit system and families. So yeah, with these, there's a lot of manufacturers on Bimstore which provide your pipe fittings, that kind of thing. So it's always good to already have them built if you can. It does save time and energy. As I can show you here, if I open up the Bimstore website, here on the manufacturer page of Polypipe, under the housing section, we've actually got the Polyfit and the Polyplumb pipe fittings available to download. As you can see on the Bimstore website, we actually have the individual parts available, as well as an already pre-built pipe system, which actually includes the Polypipe pipes, their segments, their sizes, and an already built routing preference set up, which includes all of the parts within that system. So obviously it's up to you which ones will be more relevant for yourself. So if you're only using one or two parts, you just download them. But if you're going to use a lot, you might as well download our pipe system, which we've already got through the hassle and create. If I just open up Revit, I'll just show you the difference between the downloads. So as you can see on this left-hand side here, this is actually the system downloads. So you'll receive this Revit file. And if I just go into edit type across here, as you can see, you've got the barrier polybutylene pipe, which is what's available from Polypipe. If I go into edit type, you've got all your routing preferences set up already, with all the parts, all the mins, the max sizes set up. As well as that, if I go into segments and sizes, see this. You've got your Polypipe segment built, and you've already got the 4 predefined built sizes which are available from the Polypipe system. So as well as that, these are the individual components, which again, like I said, this is actually an RFA file, which is in your Revit family editor, rather than your RVT file, which is this project here. So if I minimize that down, so we're now actually moving on to what the webcast is about. So first of all, we're going to look at what pipe fitting. It's always important to make sure that your pipe fittings are set up correctly, or if you're building them yourselves, how to set them up correctly in the first place. And one of the most important parts is to make sure that the part type has been set up correctly, as shown on the screen. So what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to open up this Revit. I'm just going to close this project, and I'm just going to open up a few more families, again, which are downloaded from Bimstore or part of the Polypipe Polyfit range. So I've actually had to go back I've had to go back and actually amend these components to actually not work, just so that I can show you as an example in this webcast on how to set them up. So the connectors and the part type isn't actually correct in these families, but if you download them from Bimstore, they will be set up correctly. So here you've got your socket blank end. We have an elbow, a T, and a coupler, all available from Polyfit. So if I select this blank end, as you can see, currently it has multi-port selected. So we're actually going to come down this scroller and look for the most relevant part, and as it's a blank end, it's actually going to be set up as a cap, because there is actually a cap on the end of the pipe. I'll go to elbow again. We're going to go in and select elbow from the drop down, again with the T, and then we have the coupler. Since the coupler is got the same radius on both connectors, the same diameter pipe required, it's actually set up as a union. If it was two different size connectors, you would actually set it up as a transition. So we've now got those, all 4 of those set up with the correct part types, and I'm just going to open up a new construction template. I'm going to open it up into the site view. If I go to systems here at the top, I click on pipe. As you can see, there's already a standard pipe in Revit in this template file, and as you can see, I've just drawn a line there. So this here will actually show you the level of detail available. So with a piping system, on course level detail down this left hand side, the pipe is always on just as a line. If I then change it to medium, it stays as a line, and then if I go to fine, it actually brings up the diameter of the pipe. So if I now just put these side by side and load our components in to our project. Load this one in. And then so now select the pipe here and go into edit type. So you can see this is just a standard pipe type, and then if I go into the routing preferences here and hit edit, all of these are currently blank. Since I've set these pipe fittings up correctly, if I go under elbow and go to this drop down on the right hand side, you can see all of the types that I've set as an elbow category are now visible. So I'm just going to put the 15mm elbow in there. Junction type, since we've identified that as a T, it's going to come as a T, the same for the union and the same for the cap. So we're using a 15mm system here. We'll look on this right hand side across here. Since we know that it's a 15mm pipe, we know that the minimum size that this part is going to be available with is 15mm. And we also know that the maximum size this pipe fit is available is, again, 15mm. So I'm just going to go through, set all these up with a minimum and maximum of 15mm, and that's the example we're going to use. 15mm in there, and 15mm in there. Okay, so that just shows you on why we're setting up the category correctly. Obviously, if you have the category set up incorrectly with your pipe fitting, it's not going to go under the right heading, and the system's not going to work correctly. Revit isn't going to be hunting for the correct part. So if I just jump back into the presentation, so we've now covered the categories. It's always important to ensure the pipe fitting is the correct category, as I've just shown, so that the round preference can be set up correctly, which we'll go into a bit more detail later on. So again, we're sticking with the pipe fittings, but this time we're going to be looking more specifically at the connectors. So again, if I open up Revit, I'm going to minimize down that project, and now we have, again, the four families which are downloaded, which we've now got the correct part type set up. So if I just select the 2 connectors here, you can see that all the data down this left hand side is just what it's pulled through as a generic connector. So we need to actually go into here and make sure this is all set up correctly. So as standard within Bimstore, we always suggest going down to global first, clicking this allow slope adjustment, and then hit apply. So this just allows for a little bit of leeway when you're actually drawing the lines within a live project, within the project environment. It just allows for a user to be slightly out and then adjusted back in to be exactly 90 degrees after he's finished drawing the system. It's just really so everything can be done a bit more efficiently when drawn into a system. It's a lot more relevant for elbows or T's which are at, like, for example, 87.5 degrees, which are slightly out, which are a bit more complicated to draw when you're in a project. So it's a lot easier to have that slope adjustment already built in, just to help the end user. So once you set that global up, if we then go back into fitting, which is actually what this is, because we know it needs to be a pipe fitting, and then down this left hand side, you've obviously got your dimensions, and then you've got an angle. Since this is a coupler, angle isn't going to be relevant because it's always going to stay at 0 degrees, and we need to pull through the radius. Obviously the radius is important, it needs to match the sizes that we're going to build into the segments further into this webcast. So obviously it's always important to make sure the radius is built correctly. So again, we're going to do the same for this elbow. So we're going to set it down to global. So select that allows slope adjustments and hit apply. And then I'm going to go back into fitting. And this time, since it's an elbow and we know it's a 90-degree elbow, we're going to go in and attach this to the angle which we've already built in. And if I just go into the data of this component, it'll show you here its angle which we've already built in at 90 degrees. We always build it in as a parameter, just so that it's easier to adjust throughout all of the types that you've got built within the component, especially when you're building the components parametrically. So again, just quickly do it for the elbow. So I'm going to go down to global, allow the slope, hit apply, go to fitting, and again we're going to link through the angle, and we're going to make sure that the radius is correct. And last of all, we have a blank end here. Go down to global, allow slope, and then into fitting. And since this one doesn't have an angle, we don't need it. Just going to check that we've set them up all correctly. Brilliant. So if I now open up this project, we're just going to load all these families. Back into the project. Put this in, project 2, left of all, the blank ends, load it in, and override it there. We now have our project with the family set up. The pipe fitting set up with the correct category and now the correct connectors. So that's going to give us the best and the most efficient way on building our system, because we now don't have to go back and worry about the pipe fittings not working. So now our pipe fittings are all set up, we can now actually move on to the segments and sizes and setting up our own pipe. So first of all, you've got the option to actually create your own material for your pipe fitting. So if I just go back into Revit and open it back up, and I actually go into the Manage tab, we'll actually go into Materials here. Within Materials, you've got all these different hardwired materials which come along with Revit itself. But for the example of this, we want to build a top pipe, for example. We actually want our own version, so I'm just going to right click and duplicate. So we're going to just call this, for example, webinar example copper, and since we know it's for the Polypipe system, we're just going to put Polypipe in there. Just rename that. If I then go into the identity, since we've duplicated this, this is now our own material. So I can actually go in and input all the manufacturer data. If I wanted, obviously I know the model is for the Polyfit range. You can go in and put costs, URLs, all that kind of thing, everything that you want to be able to be scheduled out. And then for this example, we don't want to be copper satin anymore, so I'm just going to duplicate this appearance. I'm actually going to change it to be polished, and then we're actually going to change it to be a polished copper rather than a satin copper. Obviously that's just more down to what pipe you're actually going to be using, but we've actually created our own material now. So if I hit OK, that will now apply, and we now have our own material. So if we go into next, So it's now into creating our own segments and sizes. Create our own segments and add our own size. Obviously, because we're using the Polyfit and Polypipe, or the Polypipe Polyfit fittings, it only makes sense for us to set them up using the Polypipe sizes here. So if I go into our open up our Revit project again, if I now select this pipe and hit edit type, so we actually want to make sure that we're actually building our own pipe here with our own data in, our own routing preferences, and making sure the segments and sizes was correct. So first of all, this type here is the standard. We don't want it to be the standard one anymore. We want it to be example 1. This is just so that if you're using multiple systems in the same file, or the same pipe, like different pipes within the same live project, you can do by doing this. So this one's going to call example 1. Again, you can go into the manufacturer data, call this Polypipe. We could go into model and call this Polyfit, that kind of thing. All of that can be filled out correctly, and obviously that's not the basic information. You can put more parameters in as you see fit. If I now go into the segments and sizes section inside of the routing preferences section, you can now see all of the predefined, pre-built Revit hardware segments that have already been built. So you've got coppers, carbon, steels, irons, plastics, stainless steels. So from there, we're just going to select, you can select any you want, and as you can see, the sizes are all going to change depending on what you select. But for this, we're actually wanting to create our own segment. So I'm going to click this little button here next to the segment, and it's going to allow us to do that. So for the example of this, we're going to build our own material and schedule a pipe. And then within material, we're going to select these little 3 dots. And we're actually going to go in and select our material that we want. The reason I just click use render appearance, that'll actually pull through the color when we're actually in a shaded view within the project, rather than using an all black view. It just gives it a bit of a nicer look when you're looking around the project. But obviously you can change that shaded view to be any color you wish. So we're just going to select the webinar example copper, hit OK, and as you can see, that's pulled it through. And the schedule type, we're just going to call it Polyfit for the case of this. And then as you can see in the duplicate size category, you can actually choose what predefined segment you actually want to copy the size from. So in this case, it doesn't matter because we're actually going to create our own sizes. So we can just hit OK. As you can see, it's now created your own Polyfit system. Segment, with your own sizes, with all of the sizes pulled through from the generic content. So we're actually want to go through here and delete all these sizes out because these are no longer relevant. As you can see, I can't delete the last one, as there always needs to be one segment size. So all I'm going to do is go in here and we're going to create some new sizes. So I know that I've set up a few Polypipe systems, and the nominal diameter is going to be 10. I'm just going to put the internal diameter as 8.4 and the outer diameter is 10. So now we've built that, we can actually delete the 200 off because that's not relevant. I can go in and create 15mm diameter. We'll go ahead and we'll create a 22mm diameter. Nominal, and a 28 nominal diameter, 25.6, and we'll go to 28 again. So now that is all our segments. So that is, we've created our own segment and we've actually set up our own sizes. So if I now click OK, we're now back onto our routing preferences, and it's always important, since this is our pipe system, we want to go into this pipe segment here, and we want to make sure that our pipe segment is actually selected. So as you can see here, you want to make sure that your min is set at 10 because that's the smallest pipe available, and that your max is set at 28 because those are the min and maxes that are available with this segment. So if I now click OK and OK, that will now pull through. As you can see on this left hand side, we now have an orange pipe, and it's our example one rather than the standard pipe that we had set up before. So we've now got our own segment set up, we've got our pipe fitting set up correctly, and we've built in our sizes. So next up is the routing preferences. Adding all our pipe fittings in there, adding, removing and prioritising the pipe fittings we want to come up first. So again, I open up our project and we go into the edit type here, we go into edit here. As you can see, this is our routing preferences. As you've seen before, I added our 15mm. Now we're going to go in and add our 10mm system, our 22mm and our 28mm. We're going to do the same for the T's, 10mm, 22 and 28. Same for the unions. And same for the caps. So obviously the more pipe fittings you've got, the more parts are going to be within this. There's going to be more lines within this routing preference. So I'm just going to go in and put all of this data in so that it lets me know. Move it back up again. Open that up to 10. We don't want this one to be 22. We don't want this one to be 28. And again, we want this maximum size to be 10. And we want this to be 22. And that's already set at 28. Again, we're going to do the same for them all. To 28. So now all of our parts have been set up into the routing preferences. If we then decided that we no longer wanted all of the 10mm, we can just select this remove button on the left hand side, and it'll actually remove all of the 10mm parts from within the segments and sizes, within the routing preferences, sorry. And then from there, you can actually prioritize which one you want to come first. So for example, if we had two different types of elbow, if we always wanted this elbow to become, so for example, if this 22 was actually a different family type, a total different elbow, if we want that one to be used more frequently than we want the other elbow, you can actually use these up and down arrows on the left hand side to change how much priority each pipe fitting is. So if I just click OK here, and click OK here, I can now show you our pipe working in a correct system. So if I click on Systems here, and click on Pipe, make sure we've got example 1 selected, and then under this diameter, we've got what 4 starting variations. Obviously, if I select 10 here, since we've got nothing under the 10, if I try and draw the system, you can see the little error icon there. So it won't actually let me draw this system because there's no pipe fittings available. But if I went in and changed it to a 15mm, we can draw along here and up here. You can actually see that it's actually added that elbow in. So we can draw any shape we want, and it's going to continuously add all these in. If we then wanted to come back and attach it to this, it would then add a T in. This isn't how your system would work, but it gives you a rough idea of how the system works. So it will pick up the correct pipe of component that you want, that it needs, that requires, and it'll keep building a system. So if we just extend this one here along, so as you can see, that's using a lot of the elbow and a lot of the T. If I wanted to cap off this pipe here, you can actually cap ends off at the very top here, and if I select that, it'll actually add a cap to the end of this pipe. As well as that, for example, if I draw this pipe here, and we're going to draw that 6 meters, if we know that this pipe's only available in 3 meter length, if I actually go to the modify tool at the top and use this snipping tool and come to 3 meters, if I snip at this point, it's actually added in that coupler. So now when we schedule it, it will actually let you know that it's going to require a coupler here as part of your system. Obviously, another way around that would be to create a schedule which actually calculates how many couplers you're going to require within your system. So if I refer back to presentation and hit next, we're bringing up a bit about user guides. So obviously, just to go back to the Revit project and cover and just have a little bit of a recap over what we've covered. So we've ensured that all the pipe fittings work correctly. As well as that, you've actually gone into creating your own pipe using your own material. After that, we've set our own segments, so it can have its own sizes available with it. We've then gone in and set up our own routing preferences so that we actually have a system which works. From there, obviously, I've mentioned a lot throughout that you can actually now schedule these parts. So if I actually go to a schedule here and right click on schedule and we create a new one, if I actually go into here and go down to pipe fittings and hit OK, it'll actually bring up this schedule which actually shows you all of the available parameters which are built into the component. So I want it to tell us what family it's using, what type, so it tells us the size. And then as well as that, I actually want to know the count. I want to know how many of each of these parts. If I then hit OK, this is now telling me all of the parts which have been used. So we can actually calculate from there how many elbows, how many T's, all that kind of thing are actually getting used within the system. As well as that, if I actually wanted to go a bit more advanced, I mentioned before, if you schedule the pipe, you can work out how many couplers you've required. If I actually go into here and select pipes, hit OK. Again, I want to know what type of pipe it is, so I'm going to add type across, and I'm actually going to look for the length. So now I know that I have all of these pipes here in all of these lengths. What I actually need to know is, for example, this pipe here I know is 3.2 meters, but I know that I can't actually have a 3.2 meter pipe because I just told you that they only come in 3 meter length. So if I actually go back into edit in the field and add a calculated value, I can actually add it here, number of pipe lengths required. And we're going to actually build in a little bit of a formula here. We actually want a number to come out. So our formula is going to be the length, which is already telling us, and we're going to divide that by 3 meters. So that's actually going to tell us how many pipes we actually require. Obviously, since I created it as a number, we know, well, in fact, that shouldn't have been created as a number. What we'll actually do is we'll go back in, just going to remove that. We're going to add another one. We're going to again call it number of pipe lengths required, and this time we're actually going to change it to an integer value, so that'll tell us how many pipes we actually require. If I now pull that through, as you can see, telling you that this is a 1, that requires 1, and this is 0. This is actually because, as standard, Revit will actually round down. So we actually need to put a little round up in front of this. And then we put this in the bracket. And now it's rounding up. So it's telling us for this part here, I actually need 2 pipelines. For this part, we only need 1 pipeline, etc., etc. The more mathematical you want to be, the more formulas you can put in to actually work out the length you need, because, for example, you're not going to buy a new pipe just for 49mm length. You're just going to use a cut-off from, for example, this one here. So yeah, that's a little bit about schedules. I know I didn't mention I was going to cover schedules, but that's a little handy trick on how they do work, and a way to check that your that your system can actually be scheduled correctly, and it kind of explains why it's important at the start to make sure all the data required is in there in the first place. For example, product codes, that kind of thing. So if I minimize this and go back to our presentation. So yeah, user guide. With all those downloads from Bimstore, we actually provide a user guide for pipes, for toilets, all that kind of thing. We always think it's very important for the user guide to be provided with all of our components, so that anybody of any ability can actually use all of the components on our website. But not just that, we sit and spend hours, days sometimes, building in features into these components, which you might not know is there. But through the user guide, it'll actually tell you that these features are there and how to actually use them properly. So because of that, we actually require a user guide as standard to host any component on Bimstore. Yeah, so if I then go next from there. I just wanted to cover this, which is just a couple of plugins that we use within on a day-to-day basis. So we actually use RTV tools, which we actually use to put a lot of parameters into a file all at the same time. Very useful, and it's available from rtvtools.com. And it does reduce a lot of time on adding all the data into components, especially if they're doing a large batch. And we also use Bimlink, shown on the right-hand side, which actually helps with system families as well as loadable families. If you wanted to put the data into a lot of components and make sure it's consistent, this actually allows you to pull an Excel sheet out, fill in all the data, and then re-import all of that data back in. And just one on the bottom there, to look out for the Space Group plugin, Athenium, which is actually coming out soon. It's got, like I've said before, there's lots of features that come out with here at Bimstore as well as Space Group. So if you keep in touch, I'm sure you'll hear about all these amazing features which are available. So yeah, thank you for your time, thank you for listening. I hope everyone took something away from this webcast. I hope everybody learned something. If there's any questions or queries, if you want any bit more detail about anything we've covered, or if you're interested in hosting or getting content built by ourselves, do get in touch at info@bimstore.co.uk. And like I say, thank you for listening and using Bimstore.